Every story leaves something behind: a whisper, a shadow, a question that was never answered. Here, we dig through the forgotten files, the unsolved mysteries, the chilling true crimes, and the horrors people wish had stayed buried. From haunted legends to real-life nightmares, every tale is pulled straight from the horror archives. So turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and step carefully, because once a story enters the horror archives, it never truly leaves.
Our first story tonight was sent in by a woman in Portland who moved twice and still doesn't feel safe. What unsettled me most about this one isn't the big moments, it's the small ones, the details that shouldn't be there. The song playing in my car when I started the engine wasn't one I had cued. It was a song my ex used to play for me, one that had no reason to be in my library because I deleted every trace of him 8 months ago. I was sitting in the parking garage beneath my apartment complex in Portland. It was late November, maybe 6:15 in the evening, already fully dark. Rain was hammering the concrete outside the garage entrance, and that hollow echo made everything sound like it was underwater. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed and flickered the way they always did, casting everything in that sickly yellow-green. I turned the song off and told myself it was a glitch. Spotify does weird things sometimes. I drove to the grocery store, did my shopping, came back. Normal evening, but when I got home and set the bags on the counter, I noticed something on the kitchen table. A small slip of paper, folded once. On it in handwriting I recognized immediately were the words, "You look tired today. Eat something." My stomach dropped. I lived alone. The deadbolts had been locked when I left. I checked every room, every closet, behind the shower curtain. Nothing, no one. I called my building manager and asked if anyone had accessed my unit. He said no, and the security camera in the hallway had been out for 2 weeks due to a maintenance issue. 2 weeks. I changed my locks the next day. For a while, nothing happened. Then, about a week later, I came home from work and my bed was made. I never make my bed. The comforter was pulled tight, the pillows arranged the way Marcus used to do it, with the decorative pillow centered on top. I hadn't owned that decorative pillow in months. I'd thrown it away when I moved, but there it was. I filed a police report. They were sympathetic, but said there wasn't much they could do without evidence of forced entry or a direct threat. The note could have been from anyone, they said. The pillow could have been a mix-up. I wanted to scream. I installed a Ring camera inside my apartment, pointed at the front door. For 3 days, nothing. On the 4th day, I reviewed the footage and found a 7-minute gap, just black screen. Then it resumed like nothing happened. During that 7 minutes, a new note had appeared on my nightstand. This one said, "The camera won't help." I moved out the following weekend. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, except my mother and my best friend. New apartment across town, new locks, new everything. For 2 months it was quiet. Then last Tuesday, I got home from a late shift. I opened my front door, stepped inside and smelled his cologne. Not faintly, like someone had just sprayed it in the room. I stood in the doorway for a full minute, not breathing, not moving. My eyes adjusted to the dark, and I saw that the dining chair had been pulled out from the table, angled toward the door, like someone had been sitting there, waiting. I don't know how he keeps finding me. I don't know how he gets in. The police say they're monitoring the situation, whatever that means. But every night when I come home, I stand outside my own front door, and I'm afraid to open it, because I know that one of these times, the chair won't be empty. That one unsettles me on a deep level. The idea that someone is in your space, and you can never quite catch them. But this next story takes that feeling and puts it outdoors, where you'd think you'd be safe. This story comes from a woman in North Carolina who thought the most dangerous part of her evening jog was the dark. She was wrong. I first noticed him on the running trail behind my house about 3 weeks after the breakup. And the thing that made my skin crawl was that he wasn't running. He was just standing at the edge of the tree line in running clothes, watching me stretch by the trailhead. The trail runs along the back of a housing development in suburban Charlotte. It's a paved greenway, maybe 2 miles long, bordered on both sides by dense pine forest. In the mornings it's pleasant, busy with dog walkers and cyclists, but I run in the evenings, around 7:30, when the light is dying and the trail empties out. There are no lights on most of the path. Once you're past the first quarter mile, the tree canopy closes over you and it gets dark fast. When I saw Tyler standing there, I almost called out to him. Force of habit. We dated for a year and a half, and he'd ended it by putting his fist through my apartment wall 6 inches from my face. I'd gotten a restraining order. He wasn't supposed to be within 500 feet of me. I turned around and ran the other direction. When I looked back, he was gone. The next evening, I almost didn't go, but I told myself I wouldn't let him take this from me. I went at a different time, 6:45 instead of 7:30. The trail was a little busier. I felt safe, but at the halfway point, where the path curves around a drainage pond, I saw something attached to the wooden railing of the footbridge. It was a photograph of me, printed on regular paper, taped to the wood. In the photo, I was running this exact trail, taken from behind, from maybe 20 feet away. I was wearing the outfit I'd worn the day before. I reported it to the police and showed them the photo. They said they'd increase patrols in the area. I didn't run for a week. When I finally went back, I brought pepper spray and my phone with 911 pre-dialed. I ran during daylight, 5 in the afternoon, and I only did the first mile where there were other people. Nothing happened. I started to relax. I thought maybe the police presence had scared him off. Then one night I was in my living room. Curtains open because I lived on the 2nd floor and never thought about it. I glanced toward the window and saw a red dot of light on the glass, small and steady, like a laser pointer. It moved slowly across the window, then across my wall, then settled on the couch cushion next to me. I dropped to the floor and crawled to the light switch. When the room went dark, I looked out the window from the corner. There was a figure standing in the tree line at the edge of my backyard, maybe 80 yards away, just a silhouette, but I could see he was holding something up to his face. Binoculars, maybe, or a camera. The police came, found footprints in the mud behind the tree line. Size 11 men's shoes. Tyler wears size 11, but footprints aren't enough for an arrest, apparently. The restraining order violation required a positive identification, and I couldn't see his face in the dark. The officers told me to keep my curtains closed. I installed motion sensor floodlights along the back of the building. The next morning, I found them unscrewed, not broken, carefully, deliberately unscrewed, and the bulbs placed neatly on the ground beneath each fixture. I sleep in the interior hallway now, away from windows. I've applied to break my lease, but what I can't stop thinking about is the photograph on the bridge. He'd been behind me, 20 feet behind me, and I never heard a thing. I keep wondering how many times he's been that close, and I just didn't see the photo. I want to warn you, this last story is the worst one I've read in a long time. What starts as a familiar kind of fear becomes something I genuinely wish I could forget. This was submitted by a woman who moved to a small town in Wisconsin to start over. What her ex did to stay close to her. I don't think I've ever read anything quite like it. My landlord called to ask why I had 2 sets of keys made for my apartment, and I told her I hadn't made any. There was a long pause on the phone. Then she said, "A man came in last week with your lease agreement and a copy of your ID. He said he was your boyfriend and that you'd asked him to pick up the spare." She sounded confused, like she was only now realizing something was wrong. I'd broken up with Daniel 11 months earlier. The relationship had started normal and ended with him telling me, very calmly over dinner, that he'd installed tracking software on my phone and had been reading my messages for 4 months. When I told him it was over, he didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just looked at me with this completely flat expression and said, "You don't get to decide that." I moved from Minneapolis to a small town in Wisconsin, about 90 miles away. New job, new phone, new everything. I told almost no one where I was going. After the landlord's call, I had the locks changed immediately and filed a police report. The officer took notes and told me to document everything. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling of my studio apartment, listening to the old building creak and settle. The wind was pushing against the windows, and the radiator was clicking the way it does when the heat cycles on. Every sound felt intentional. 3 days later, I found a USB drive on my doormat. No note, no packaging, just a plain black flash drive. I knew I shouldn't plug it in, but I did. On an old laptop not connected to Wi-Fi, there was one folder on it. Inside were photographs, hundreds of photographs, of me getting into my car, walking into work, buying coffee at the place on Elm Street, sitting in my apartment, visible through the window. Some were taken from across the street. Some were taken from much, much closer. There were photos of me sleeping, taken from inside the apartment. I could see my nightstand, my water glass, the book I'd been reading. The angle was from the foot of the bed, looking down at me. I threw up. I called the police, and this time they took it seriously. They dusted for prints, checked the windows, checked the locks. No signs of forced entry. The officer told me, off the record, that whoever did this likely had a key and had been entering regularly. I stayed with a coworker that night. The next day, the police called and told me something that I still have trouble processing. While investigating, they'd spoken to the tenant in the unit directly below mine. That unit had been rented 5 months ago to a man matching Daniel's description, under a different name. The tenant had been quiet, kept to himself, paid rent on time. When they went to question him, the apartment was empty. He'd cleared out overnight. But here's what keeps me awake. When they searched his unit, they found the ceiling in the bedroom closet had been modified. A small panel had been cut and fitted back into place, almost invisible unless you knew to look. It opened into the crawl space between our floors. There were blankets in the crawl space, a pillow, granola bar wrappers, a laptop with a live feed from a camera that, after searching, they found hidden in my smoke detector. He had been living between our floors. Not every night, the police think, but regularly. The blankets were worn, the wrappers numbered in the dozens. He'd been up there, 8 feet above his own bed and 4 feet below mine, watching me on a screen. And sometimes, based on the photos, he'd come up through my closet while I was asleep. They haven't found Daniel. The name on the lease was fake. The ID was fake, and the address he listed doesn't exist. My coworker's husband is a contractor, and he checked the crawl space in my new place before I moved in. It's clean, but I don't sleep well anymore. I wake up at 2, 3 in the morning and I just listen. I listen to the building settle, and I try to convince myself that the soft sound I hear above the ceiling is just the pipes. But sometimes, it sounds like breathing.
And that's where tonight's file closes, but the archives are far from empty. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and join us as we uncover more horrors, mysteries, and true crimes hidden in the horror archives. Until next time, keep the lights low, keep listening, because you never know what story we'll uncover next.